Good morning, everyone, again, and it's great to see you. I just want to make an announcement. So the hoarding support groups, the hoarding support level 1 is going to start, as far as we know right now, June the 7th, and it's going to go on alternate Tuesdays. We're aiming right now 2:30 to 3:30 Eastern time, so whatever that equates to in your time. And it's going to go on until September 13th. The reason I want it to be every second week is I don't want to overload you. I want there to be time in between where you can digest, where you can try many of the ideas and the strategies that we talk about, and some introspection as well. It's really important that people understand themselves as they clutter, hoard, all right, that lovingly and gently they accept who they are, and then they build realistic goals that move them out of the uncomfortable zone, understanding, topic today, that they will never, no one ever is perfect, right? So whoever we are, there, wherever we go, there we are. And it's better if we lovingly and gently accept ourselves, not so much the price we pay. That's number one. So if people could, spaces are filling up relatively quickly. If you are interested, could you let me know? All right. Important thing about hoarding support group level 1, you get a free copy of Conquer the Clutter, the print version. You get free access to the private website with all of the interactive, tabulatable tools and resources that would be really handy for you to track your progress. That's number one. Number two is, if you want to, you can bring one permanent, it has to be the same person, clutter buddy, somebody you know really well, somebody you trust, and they know you. Word to the wise, don't make it somebody who thinks they have answers for other people. I want you finding your answers. I want you implementing the things that work for you and having the freedom and the liberty to try out what works and what doesn't work and how much, all right? They come for free. There are some rules around the Clutter Buddy, and that is, number one, the individuals who are living with clutter themselves, they get to speak first. No one gives advice, but you can share from your experience, not in a teaching way, but in a sharing way. Your Clutter Buddy doesn't ever have to roll up their sleeves and physically help you with the clutter. They are the person who, when you celebrate a success or you're feeling good about something, they're the person who you can call, and you know they're not going to give you their opinion. They are going to support you based on the best practice information that they are learning as well from the group. And on days when you're disappointed, they are the person, all right, who you know you can call and trust. And again, they're not giving you advice and criticism. They are reinforcing, strengthening your resolve based on the information that they have learned in the group as well. Slight change for the hoarding support group level 3. We have to start on June the 10th. I got the rotation wrong when I advertised it. And I have a client who is a longstanding client who has a double session on the off Friday mornings. So it will go from June 10th on to whatever the next 2 weeks is after October 7th, again on alternate weeks for 10 weeks. The level 1 is 8 weeks. The level 3 because we're going to be getting into actually working on your stuff in sessions. All right. And while we're saying it's an hour, it could go an hour and a half if it needs to. This is hands-on. This is a deeper level of support. The family group is also proving to be quite interesting as far as response. It remains the same. It starts June 11th and goes through till July 2nd. It's 4 weeks in a row. All right. Okay. Today's material. So, we talk about relationships sustaining us. But have you ever thought that actually the most important relationship any of us has is the relationship we have with ourselves, first and foremost? Because we can only bring to any other relationship what we nurture and we recognize and strengthen in ourselves. That's the basis of what we have to offer. All right. This week, we're going to look at the specific beliefs and fears that most often are associated with perfectionism, which is epidemic with procrastination. If you're wondering why you can't get started, one of the things I want you to look at is how much of the traits that are associated with perfectionism, even though you would never call yourself a perfectionist, maybe, how many of those are actually looming in the back of your mind, or they are the messages on the committee voices, that tape in your head that plays back all of the shoulds, the who you are as a person, what you're worth, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. All right. The other thing too is those specific beliefs and fears also can interfere with us being able to ever get consistently to our A game. And that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for a perfectionism. In fact, we want to have our radar up to spot it before we fall into these fears and beliefs. Our A game is individual to the person. It promotes great effort. And sometimes it even allows us to achieve excellence. All right. Now, tiny bit of a review. Excellence comes in two types. The first is adaptive. All right. Adaptive is, and how many people here feel that they have high standards? All right. You believe realistically that your performance, a good deal of the time, when you aim for it, you're capable of reaching these high standards. Not every time. That's unrealistic. The context of what you're trying to do changes. All right. And context is a huge influencer. Like Nora said, did you just get your second COVID booster and you're feeling a little whipped? This would not be the day to be aiming for the best level even of your A game, no matter what it is. All right. Do you have worries? Do you have concerns? What's the context? Look at the context of your life today. All right. Might be different tomorrow. Individuals who are living with adaptive excellence also believe that they have a reasonable chance, they stand some chance of actually being successful at reaching the essential elements of what makes something worth the effort. And that predictability, that capacity that you have, whether you pull it off this time or not, isn't the measure. All right. That is actually an element of your identity. And you feel good about that. You allow yourself to be kind and gentle to yourself on the days when you don't pull it off. Now, if there's a pattern of not pulling it off, then it's time to sit back, put yourself on pause, and do a reassessment. What's getting in the way? And deal with that. But it isn't about you. It isn't about your worth. It isn't about you being a failure. It's about, well, I know I'm capable of more than that, a better result than that. What's getting in the way? Solve that. The second type of excellence is maladaptive. All right, and that's what we've been talking about. The standards are textbook, way too high, all right, especially given your current context. And that context can be what you have available to you in the way of just basic skills, or your energy level. Maybe today isn't, for whatever reason. It just is not a major energetic day. You can't give what you don't have. You need to scale back. You need to not beat yourself up and keep pushing for something that right now in this context, best evidence is it's just not realistic. All right. Because what we don't want to do, we're all a little like puppies. Have you ever thought of that? You know how with puppies, when you're training yourself or you're training them, you always want to end on a positive, on a success, right? Well, we're a little like puppies too, human nature. When we continually disappoint ourselves, what do you think that does to us? And then when we make that disappointment part of our identity, that we're a failure, what do you think that's going to do for your next effort? And it's not logical. It's not accurate. So stop doing it. Put yourself on pause when you're bumping your head against what appears to be a brick wall in a project or a goal. Take a step back. Put yourself on pause and ask yourself, what's getting in the way? All right. And if that is the reality, that this is not going to be the best day that you hoped for, ask yourself the 3 questions. What are they? Right now, this moment, what do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make enough of a difference? That is your best strategy. Because if you meet your needs better right now, whatever they are, all right, you will bring more to your A game. If you beat yourself up, you're digging yourself in a hole. And then you leave yourself prone to self-criticism. Like there aren't enough opinions in our life, right? There isn't enough bad messaging in our life, no matter where it's coming from. We're going to undercut ourselves, all right? Just accept that there seems to be a gap between our standards as we're trying to apply them and our performance. Reasonably, who in their right mind would keep beating themselves up? If you recognize that right now in the context of today, it's not working that well, adapt. Stop undercutting yourself with self-criticism and self-bullying. It makes you more vulnerable for feelings of depression. Low self-esteem is almost like an essential component, all right, of depression. Why do it to yourself? It doesn't make sense. If you are doing it, stop it. If you have a habit of doing it, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Because no child was born. None of us were born criticizing ourselves and undercutting ourselves. So that message, if it has become epidemic, if it's a go-to, a default, and now you're saying it to yourself, it came from somewhere, and it's time to figure that out. All right, it's time to figure that out, and it's time to turn down the volume. And the reason I'm belaboring this is because all of those maladaptive things we have a tendency to do either to ourselves or to listen to on the committee voices in our head, they make us excessively worried about making mistakes. Write that one down. They all make us excessively prone, very, very prone and susceptible to excessively worrying about mistakes. Guess what? You can't make progress if you're afraid of making mistakes. The only person who doesn't make mistakes is the person who does nothing. Every time you attempt something, you take the risk you're going to make a mistake. The important thing is what? Come on, all together. What is it? Put it in the chat box now. What is it? Little hint. I learned something from it. It helped me. Making that mistake helped me adapt. So if I listen to it rather than beat myself up with it, I'm a little closer to where I want to go and the way that's going to work. Roll on mistakes. Roll on, okay? Because they are the way that I am going to learn. That didn't work so well in this context. So what do we do instead? Adaptive, maladaptive, all right? Of course, if it's worth the effort, we are always going to strive for our A game. But sometimes our A game, given the context, sometimes we have to open our eyes and accept our A game today. For instance, today, I put my back out, okay? I do a drive back and forth to my practice 400 kilometers away. It's not that good for your back. So on this trip, my back went, guess what? You may be going, but we're not going happily with you. Today, guess what, folks? I have to film and video hoarding level 1, hoarding level 2, procrastination, all of my workshops. I'm doing 3 hours of videoing after I speak with you. Guess what? We're going to be doing a lot of cutting and correcting. This is not going to be an A game day, but I'm going to do it anyway. All right? Because it's going to be with adaptation, and I invite you to do the same thing in whatever faces you today. All right, it's going to be pretty darn good, but it's only going to be pretty darn good because we're going to be stopping. I'm going to be regrouping. We're going to be doing some correcting. We're going to be starting again. We're going to be continuing on. What definition of A game does that meet? Not, but we're going to do it anyway. We're going to do it anyway. We're going to make it happen. Because one of the things that in helping the people I help, I've learned to accept about myself is to understand and accept. Don't be afraid of, don't resist. Best you can learn from that sometimes this afternoon, the 3 hours of videoing, I am going to make mistakes and we are going to find a way to adapt and work around it. What are you going to do today? All right. And are you going to approach it, whether it's just changes? Maybe it's not so much doing something as not doing something. Is there something that is counterproductive that you're prone to? Maybe it's a not doing something. All right. Okay. So accept there will be bad days. Your performance is going to be temporarily affected. Mine is going to be, yours is going to be. Stop criticizing yourself. Stop trying to avoid it. As best you can, learn to tolerate the frustration that those mistakes create. And sometimes where they get a jump on you, the disappointment that you didn't meet the goal exactly as you wanted it to be to set it. But don't, for heaven's sakes, don't make it personal. It's not about you. It's not about your worth. It's not about your capability. Also, don't be that person who always has to, when something goes wrong, always has to find someone else to blame. All right. If it isn't you, it's something. If it went wrong, somebody's to blame. No, 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 no. All right. That puts you in a really negative mindset. And that isn't going to serve you well. Stuff happens. All right. What do you do? What do you do when stuff happens this week? Put yourself on pause and look at the plan. You look at, there was either something that additional was needed in that plan and adaptation. It needed more or less effort. Yes, it is possible that it would need less effort. All right, if you're getting yourself all worked up. Your work strategies. I've adapted my work strategy today because of my back. How can you adapt your work strategy to keep you moving forward? Because that's the way you will keep moving forward to those goals that you want. All right. Does anybody see themselves in any of the following? Mediocrity. Being mediocre, being average isn't worthy. It's not a worthy effort if you're just average. Anybody? I see some hands up. Some days, mediocre is darn good given the context that you're working in, given what you have to work with. All right. Someday you've got to check the context. Only the ideal is acceptable. Only the ideal. Oh, here's another one. And the ideal should be possible on an ongoing, permanent basis, continuously. Gosh, the weather can't even do that. Why would human beings as complex as we are be able to do that? Come on. Develop a sense of humor about those fears, those beliefs, those rules we give ourselves. And it's not that any old slack effort will do. No. Always, always, always try for at least, at a minimum, good enough. And you know what? If you can ice the cake a little better, then make it a little better. But at a certain point, get off your own back. All right? Mistakes and flaws. Anybody believe this? That if something goes wrong or something doesn't turn out as it should, mistakes and flaws are evidence that somebody has failed. Somebody has to have made a mistake. Somebody has to be, we wouldn't call them inadequate, but you find fault. Well, clearly something was wrong if a mistake happens. You're hoping mistakes happen. That's how you're going to learn to improve your game. Do you realize that? Okay. Have a look at the mistakes. Chew on them, analyze them, dissect them. How did that happen? Because if you spend a little time and effort figuring out what went wrong there, you can spot it coming from a further distance the next time. Does it guarantee there won't be a mistake or a flaw? No, but probably on a good day when you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, all right, probably you'll be able to spot it further out. And maybe whatever the cost that you don't want to pay on that goal, you don't want to lose, maybe you can minimize that a good deal of the time. All right. So when you're afraid of making mistakes, or you're just battered and bruised from what you say to yourself, or you let other people take cheap shots and say to you, all right, and then you take it in and you digest it, would it surprise you that procrastinating can look like a good option? Does that surprise you when you wear yourself out with negativity or other people's negativity? but you're being polite. All right. So you listen to it and you wonder whether maybe a little bit of it could be true. No. So, next belief. If you're truly smart and excellent at something, it shouldn't require a great effort. It should come to you easily. Otherwise, the harder you have to work at something, the more effort you have to put into it. Clearly, it's an indicator that you're not as excellent as you want to be. Because if you were truly outstanding, or heaven forbid, at least beyond mediocre or average, difficult things would be easy. Does anybody believe that? Because you know what? Depending on what you're bringing to the game, your game today. Okay, so today, what's the best you can bring to your day today? And some days, it's going to be like Butterfingers heaven. You're going to make mistakes. Does that mean on that day that you are less capable or that you are less worthy? The cake didn't rise. It looked like a manhole cover. Is that a day that you are now not a good cook? You are not a good baker? You dropped a stitch knitting. All right, you didn't find it for 5 rows. Does that mean? What are you saying to yourself? Be really careful. This week, I want you to listen. When you do make mistakes, and please, Lord, send them lots of mistakes, okay? So that they can first and foremost hear, what is the first thing you say to yourself? Will you pay attention to that? And will you come to next week's podcast with a list of what is the first thing you say to yourself? Now, if you have a little time and you're really interested, I'd like you to sit back when you do that and go, I was not born saying that to myself. Where did I get that? All right. Or when you make a mistake, every little thing that's a flaw, you apologize for. Are you an apologizer? You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to. Do you believe that if you are really worthy and you're not mediocre, that things should be instantaneous and certain? So because you did something just wonderfully today, tomorrow it should be the same? Do you believe that about yourself? What's wrong with me? Anybody say that when they make a mistake? What's wrong with me? Not a darn thing. And that if you have to put forth even a moderate effort, the person who has to put forth more effort to get to the same result somehow is less than the person who appears not to have to. Really? By what standard? And that when you learn something, it should be instant. And that's how you prove how smart you are. I have news for you. Kind beats smart every time. Be kind to yourself. All right? Kind beats smart every time. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Okay. Here's what's wrong with that thinking now I want you to consider. Your need, my need sometimes to be easily outstanding shouldn't require an effort. And it should be predictable, like anything is predictable. That will interfere with doing the work that's needed, The more we belabor ourselves for having to put in an extraordinary effort to achieve something, especially something that we believe we know how to do reasonably well, all right? The more we feel that making that extra effort, it shouldn't be needed, all right, the more we are likely to undercut ourselves and end up at a certain point leaving us really susceptible for one of two things, either procrastination or underachievement with respect to that goal. Why? Because when we engage in negative thinking rather than strategic thinking, putting ourselves, just step aside, put ourselves on pause for a second, assess what's going wrong here. Is something missing? What is different that this is harder and it's not turning out as well? All right. Not being willing to accept that that might be good enough. If you really believe it isn't, you pretty much have two choices at that point. You're only giving yourself two choices. One is to procrastinate. Oh, well, we'll put it down and we won't do anything. We won't finish anything. All right. Or chronic underachievement. You bail on yourself. Why? Because you're not building the skills and the stamina, the personal stamina, okay, to being willing to do what's necessary to learn and adapt. Just because you know how to do something, even the thing you know how to do best, if you can't accept that it's not going to turn out well every time or most times even, you're creating a path to procrastination. And it also is influencing you not to be able to put the effort and strategic thinking in to learn how to adapt and continue. And you cannot solve the clutter problem if you are not accepting of yourself in that you're frustrated. It's hard to make a decision. You pace yourself, but you keep going little bits at a time. And when you say, that's why I say so often, when you say 15 minutes, no matter what's happening, you set that timer and you keep going for 15 minutes. And when it goes off, stop. And if you can continue doing that, then when you make a deal to yourself, you will keep that deal to yourself. It is a basic strategy to self-regulating because it really truly is the little bit you do every day consistently that will get you to where you want to be and will keep you where you want to be. All right. Self-regulation and habituation is absolutely essential, but you learn it by small bites, and you learn it by sometimes that 15 minutes you're looking at the clock that, come on, darn you, ring, 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 because it's just not a great day when you've got the focus or the energy, but you accept. I gave my word to myself and I will keep my word to myself. How many people here believe that it's just easier and safer to go things alone? If you want it done properly, you do it yourself. Okay, so if that's true, what are you going to do on a day when you just don't have the steam in the tank? Or it requires two people. Not everything you're going to have to do is a one-person job. You've got to learn how to compromise with yourself. All right. So you believe that you're better doing things by yourself. Because does anybody here believe that because if you need help somehow it's a sign of weakness to need and get help? Is that what that means? Does that mean that even though in the back of your mind you're thinking, I really would like to go to that hoarding level 1 support group, but everybody's going to be bringing a clutter buddy and I'm just not. You don't have to bring a clutter buddy, but you have the right to bring a clutter buddy for free. Does that mean that you can't listen to other people's input? You can't be part of a team? It's a sign of weakness if you need help. If you do, you're going to not every day, even things that are one person jobs, it's not always going to be possible. And thank you, Denise, being ashamed to ask for help. Because what does that mean? It means you're inadequate, right? That you couldn't do it yourself? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Poor Hafsa, sometimes we have an intercom here, and I'm sure sometimes she'd like to turn it off. You just sometimes get so frustrated with a machine. I get frustrated with my computer all the time. And I say, Hafsa, can you come up and help me sort this out? This machine is not working the way that I am used to it working. And I'm so frustrated, I can't figure it out. Being able to ask for help and knowing that it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, or that you're inadequate, or you're not capable, or you're not, you fill in the word, whatever it is. It doesn't mean that. It means I'm done. I'm full. I could use another set of eyes. I could use another set of eyes. Nobody said just because I ask you for your help that I'm going to take it. I'm asking for advice. I'm asking for input because it helps me expand my options. All right. If I can expand my options, I can pick and choose. But another set of eyes on something is generally a really good boost. All right. I know before I say this, how many people here really believe, right? And they are secretly and silently committed to the fact that there is a right way. Anybody? There is a right way. Yep, there is a right way. Okay. In fact, there's generally one correct right way, right? To any problem. And if you're going to be successful, you have to find that right way. How comfortable are people here in generating and developing strategic thinking that allows you to be, when that doesn't work, or you can't find that right way, or the right way isn't working well enough, that you can actually be a think outside the box person? Anybody not comfortable giving themselves permission to be a think outside the box person? A think outside the box person would approach something that looks like failure by saying, well, that didn't work. What do I think this thing needs? This situation needs? I wonder what would happen. A think outside the box person will allow themselves to feel safe, and I encourage you to be this, develop this skill, okay, where you just suspend what has to happen in the right way. If you tried it, it didn't work well enough, or maybe you don't want to be locked into just having one way to do sorting, deciding, cluttering, making decisions. All right, maybe you're going to say to yourself, I wonder what would happen if I took all of the red things, all right, all of the red things, all of the teacups, all of the whatever category of thing, and I just looked for those things. And then I put those together and I made a decision. All right, I wonder what would happen. I wonder what would happen if Elaine says, try really, really hard for 15 minutes. But you know what? 15 minutes feels like an eternity to me. I wonder what would happen if I made a commitment to myself to do I'm just getting started, 3 5-minute intervals. I wonder what would happen. Be a think outside the box person. The most important part in that 15-minute deal that I recommend, the most important element in that is that just like when you give your word to someone else, you would move heaven and earth to keep your word, that you do it to yourself as well. But you do it with kindness, you do it with acceptance, and you're gentle. Okay, so if gentle and kind means that you just don't have 15 minutes in the tank, do start with some form of timer, because I swear when that bell goes off, it's like being let out of jail. All right, if it's something you really don't want to do, it's just like, yay. All right, you look forward to it. And so, in fact, you may make a better effort waiting for that bell to ring. Mix it up in a way. I wonder what would happen. All right, and take a risk. Take a risk this week. And that risk would be, I'm going to try something, and it might end up being the wrong choice, but I will have learned from it. All right, because if you can't risk making mistakes, you can't learn. And if you can't accept with kindness and gentleness, accepting yourself on your worst day, well, glad this day is over, then you make yourself afraid of your own disapproval. All right. You make things bigger than they are when you're afraid to make a choice, when you find it overwhelming. All right. And you think, oh, if I make the wrong choice, it's permanent, forever. It isn't. So few things in life have that importance, and none of the things you have that importance that you would beat yourself up forever. All right. And just as important, say you do make a mistake, say you give something away, or you donate it, or you whatever you do with it, and 6 months down the road, all right, you go, I gave that away. That feeling of, I knew it. I knew I was going to need that thing someday. Yeah, but how much space was it going to hold up in the meantime? And what was it going to prevent you from doing? Right? And that feeling of, darn, is going to be intolerable. Shake it off. All right? You can't look forward with certainty. That's why they call it future. All right. And you can influence the outcome, but you can't control the outcome. All right. Anybody here know in their nature that they are super competitive? Anybody here super competitive? I see some like this. Okay. So super competitive can look like not competitive at all. But actually, you've got to keep a real handle on that super competitiveness, right? Because actually, you can be so competitive that it's about winning. Or more importantly, sometimes, maybe it isn't about winning, it's about not losing. All right. And so, does that in some way make you prone to avoiding any activity where there's a competitive aspect to it, where you could possibly lose, especially when you're competing with others? Is it easier to handicap yourself. Is not winning a failure? Are you saying that all of those people who run marathons and that poor guy who comes in last, are you saying he's not a winner? She's not a winner? Okay. We in our culture have developed that first prize, second prize, third prize, the gold cup, and somehow that is the only emblem of success. I say if you can run a marathon, I say if you can walk or crawl a marathon, you're doing pretty well. All right. You're all winners. All right. Have you associated the risk of not winning, the risk of failure, that somehow it's going to indicate you're inadequate or less than the person who came in first, second, and third? And that somehow have you got deep inside you a belief that that makes you less worthy? You just somehow don't measure up. Or do you apply that to other things as well? It could be the bake-off, right? It could be the chili contest. It could be the anything. It could be how clean and neat and tidy your house is. Right? You can apply this principle to anything. And is it easier then if you can't face doing it less than the right way, or you're trying and it's not working out the way you want and need it to be? It's frustrating, it's confusing making those decisions. You just can't see it's worthwhile in making decisions, which are very, very exhausting, by the way. All right. I defy somebody who runs a marathon to come in and clean up a pile of clutter and make decisions that there aren't. I defy them to do that. All right. It's exhausting making those decisions. And when there's a fair amount of clutter or chaos, or things are disheveled, all right, it's not like you get a big return right away visually, right? So it can feel like the never-ending story. It can feel like all that effort and there wasn't much to show for it. That can be true in the beginning. That's why I really encourage you, start in one corner and start working your way around. All right. And take pictures, the before, the after the 15 minutes, after the next 15 minutes, because we all need validation that what we're going to put our effort into achieved something. All right. It's not, the picture is not, that's why I don't use pictures on my website, because I find them very debilitating for people. All right. So take your own picture. You've got a smartphone or you've got even a camera. All right. The other thing too is when you're making decisions, I am gratified by the number of people who have a little camera with them. Sometimes it's their smartphone. Sometimes it's just a little camera and they save it on a memory card of something that they're going to part with, so that they, in their own way that's acceptable to them, that meets their need, they feel that they have enough of it still with them in the form of the picture. If that's something that you respond to and that gives you peace, for heaven's sakes, do it. All right. All right. So, do you self-handicap? Do you often choose to lose? Do you do that by giving up? Do you do that by procrastinating and allowing yourself to be distracted? Are you choosing to lose? Why? Because you can't guarantee success. When you look at those piles, when you look at whatever it is that you want to face down, Is it just safer? Maybe it isn't as gratifying. Maybe it doesn't feel good, but is it safer to allow yourself to get distracted or to procrastinate to such a degree that you can't succeed, and then you make it about, oh, well, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about my ability to resolve this. It was because, my gosh, the phone rang off the hook that day. And so I chose to pick it up and answer all those calls. Or, I sat down with a book for my 15 minutes of self-relaxation. And before I knew it, I'd finished the book. All right. It's a choice, people. And what we choose leads us in the direction of where we're going to go. All right. Where do you want to go? Are you choosing to lose because you're feeling insufficient to have the success that you feel you need? What do you need? All right. And I don't mean to push it. I'm not pushing this. But if you're at that point where you are allowing yourself distraction or you're self-handicapping, and you convince yourself you're just very busy or you're something, or there's whatever that reason is, all right, you might want to consider the Hoarding Support Group Level 1. Because when I did this before, I've done it 3-4 times, at least half the people in there made significant progress. All right, particularly those people who chose a clutter buddy. All right, so think about it. If you need some additional support, and the other thing too is, if the cost of the group is what's kind of making you nervous about even thinking about it, talk to me about how over the number of weeks that you can break it up into little payments and chunks. It's not about the money. It's going to cost me to do the group. That's why I have to charge, because it means that in that time frame, I can't take somebody from the waiting list, okay, and give them a session. So that's why there has to be a cost. But we can work out the payment of that, whatever way you need. All right. It's not about the money. So if that would help, do it. For heaven's sakes, do it. And think, who could be your free clutter buddy? Because you're going to get a free copy of the print copy of the book. All right. You will have to pay the postage. If you live in Zimbabwe, you're going to have to pay the postage to Zimbabwe, but you get a free copy of the book. All right. And you get the website to work from. So you've got a lot of tools and resources there just to help you pace yourself. How many people, we're going to wind up on this. How many people would say about themselves that they're all or nothing thinkers? Anybody here an all or nothing thinker? All right. And that to be acceptable, you must do everything. It has to be right. And until it is exactly the way it needs to be, there's no point. You're fooling yourself. You're lying to yourself to appreciate progress. Until it's done and it's right. Close your eyes, be very, very quiet in your own mind, and ask yourself, whose voice is on that tape? Because you weren't born with that message. You think of this way, okay? You were pre-verbal at birth, right? Okay, but you managed to get yourself out of one mother of a tunnel. And when you were born, that was what was in your mind. That is your own message? No. Whose voice is on that message? Because if you're stuck, even silently, incapable of appreciating progress, believing that little bit of progress regularly, just a little bit even, is pointless. Because just look how much left there is to do. Anybody gets stuck in that mindset? It's all well and good to be happy that I cleared 6 square inches or 2 square feet off a counter, but look at how much left. Okay, yeah. Use your smartphone, use a camera, use something to validate, to own and preserve the progress you made. All right. And then if you settle somehow, if you settle for less than the right way, less than enough, somehow you're just buying on for some kind of loser thinking. Anybody think that? Because that kind of loser thinking, that's for people who either don't know the right way or aren't capable of measuring up. Any of that in anybody's thinking. Does anybody here today find setting goals confusing? Because of course, goals mean that you're making something a priority, right? Right? Sure. How can you set goals? Everything's important. Everything's a priority. Does anybody get stuck in that kind of thinking? Where to start? So I start there, but what about that? You'll get to that. You will get to that. But if you stay stuck in that thinking, all right, you'll never get there. Because today, it would mean, think about this. It would mean, if that thinking is right, that every single day reaching your goal is impossible, because you would have to be a different person. Your family, whoever's helping to create the clutter, all right, you and they would have to be, starting right now, this moment, different people. Because today, whatever we are, whatever habits we have that created this clutter, that continues to contribute to it, that's still happening, right? Hopefully not at the level that the piles have created, all right? But that would mean that suddenly you have to be perfect and that nothing is getting put down or left or building up. Really? You change who you are, how you do things, what you see as capable. You change on a dime. Is that even reasonable? Is that reasonable? It isn't reasonable. All right. And when you engage in that kind of thinking, you discourage yourself. You discourage yourself and you undermine yourself. The little bit you do every day matters. And you're a hero for doing it, because it's not like anybody's going to give you a pat on the back, or probably most of the voices in that committee, okay, they're not going to be celebrating you. All right. So I want you to celebrate yourself. And that's not just, cheesy new age talk. Celebrate the progress you make. And if there's any way possible, all right, that before you put something down, you can say 2 things to yourself. There is no just for now. Let that be a new mantra. There is no just for now. That's number 1. And number 2, don't put it down, put it away. Don't put it down, put it away. All right. Why? Just do it. It never gets easier. 3 things. I lied to you. 3 things. There is no just for now. Don't put it down, put it away, or as close to away as you can reasonably reach. All right. Just do it now. It never gets easier. When it's a small job, just do it now. It never gets easier. I say I don't hoard, and I say that to myself 20 times a day. Elaine, just do it now. It never gets easier. All right, just do it. Take the 5 steps. One of the other things for homework I want you to do, I want you to look at the areas and the types of things that are creating a headache for you, a problem, okay? And then I want you to sit and I want you to ask yourself, how far away from where this thing goes or probably should go, could go, how far away from that home space is it? And is the home space within no more than 5 or 6 steps from where I'd use this darn thing? Now, the one exception, and I say this with a little humor, but I firmly believe it, is the one exception to that is scissors. I personally think you need scissors in every room. All right. I think you need scissors and a pen or a pencil in every room and a little pad of paper. Yeah. Okay. All right. Would you do those things this week? And would you please, and thank you so much to those people, many people, to everyone who sent their flaws and their strengths lists. It was gratifying to read it. And I love the fact, I appreciate the fact that you're thinking about what we've talked about in our podcast in the upcoming week. I really appreciate that because it takes a fair amount of work to put this podcast together, and I'm committed that it's at no cost so that everybody has help, even if they can't afford services, that there's a way to help. And because that chewing on it and thinking about it and doing the best you can to figure out where you can take those concepts for yourself productively, that's the road to figuring things out and getting to where you want to be. Okay, it's the chewing it. It isn't just being here with me. It's chewing on it later as well. All right. Chewing on it and digesting it. Okay, let's have a look at a few of the messages in the chat box. And then we will, what are the dates again? Okay, all right, the dates. So for hoarding support group level 1, that's the one with the clutter buddy. All right. It starts on alternate Tuesdays, starting June the 7th, going through to September 13th. All right. And it's eight sessions. And the cost is whatever the equivalent would be, $395 Canadian. All right. And that includes the tax. The cost isn't actually $395, but I have to include the tax that we have to pay here. And if you go on, if you pay with PayPal, you can use a credit card. If I'd rather you didn't, but you can. And I think that PayPal will convert it to whatever your cost internationally, because I know we've got people from the States. I know we've got people from Britain. So what it will convert it, I believe. Then there's, if you've done hoarding level 1 and hoarding level 2, or you've done an intensive, there is a program in Hamilton that was 12 weeks. And you've done that and you've assimilated that material, you're working with it. Then the hoarding support group level 3 is 10 alternate weeks on Fridays. We're aiming right now for 10:30 to 11:30, but try not to plan anything until noon. Okay, just sometimes we're going to run over because we're going to be working at a much deeper level. And that's going to start June, I think I said 10th going through to whatever 2 weeks after October 7th is. And that's $425, and tax included. Then there's one for families. So we've got people here today who are friends or loved ones of individuals who are struggling with clutter. The family group starts June 11th, goes through to July 2nd. It's 4 consecutive weeks, Saturdays, 2:30 to 3:30. And the cost for that is $240. Now, one of the things that could happen, if the friends and family group don't fill up, if we don't have enough people to run that, because it's less likely that friends and family are going to be part of the podcast, then we could use that time slot on Saturdays, for people who are working, who want to be part of one of the other groups. All right. Okay. You take care. You have a great week, and I will save these chat messages. And I wish you a very gentle, very productive, very satisfying upcoming week, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Take care, everybody.
Can you do it? Yes, you can. Yes, you can.